G'day guys, and welcome to another YouTube lesson. Today we're going to be taking a look at business growth and decline as the subtopic under this first major topic of nature of business. We're going to be looking at the stages of the business life cycle, which include establishment, growth, maturity, and post-maturity. And then we're going to take a brief look at responding to challenges at each stage of the business life cycle. All right, so stages of the business life cycle. The various four stages I mentioned before include the establishment stage. It's when a business first starts, and you'll see a graph that looks something like that. And then at the end, for post-maturity, you'll have renewal, steady state, or decline. And you start off slow. It's just the business establishing itself. Then you'll find the business rapidly starts to increase in size. You get the growth stage of the business life cycle. Then maturity, and we'll talk more in depth about this in just a little bit. The business matures, sales tend to flatten out or plateau. And then we move into the final stage in the business life cycle, which is post-maturity. And there's three things that can occur there. We can find a business declines, it continues really at that maturity level, a steady state, or we can see continued regrowth or renewal. All right, now, the first stage is known as the establishment stage. This is the birth of a business and generally see where profit is negative. The owner has invested both time and money preparing for what is to come. Businesses are seen as usually quite vulnerable at this stage. Both external and the internal environmental factors can have a huge impact and effect on the future of the business. The aim at this stage is to get the business into a solid foundation, or set up a solid foundation of profitable sales and to try and get some level of consistent cash flow. Detailed planning during this stage can be very important. And the old saying there, if you plan to fail, then you fail. Then you plan. If you fail to plan, I'll get it right. If you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. And this is very true at this particular stage. So good planning can increase the chance of success during this establishment phase. Some challenges facing business at this stage, and it's important to identify the characteristics, but also the challenges, and then also the way to respond to those challenges. So the challenges that we have here are businesses are facing high probability of failure, poor cash flow, and slow sales. Now, to respond to these challenges at the establishment phase or stage, you can implement cash flow statements and also develop budgets. So again, that's our first stage in the business life cycle, and where we find here we have the establishment. Now, when your business has been around for a little bit of time, you'll head into the growth stage if you're lucky. Keep in mind that some of the businesses never get out of the establishment phase. Remember, 3 out of 4 businesses, thereabouts, fail within the first 5 years. So not all make it through to this next stage, that stage being the growth stage. In this phase, or stage, tomato, tomato, same thing, the business is continually gaining regular customers. You can differentiate between the establishment phase and the growth phase with that in itself. Are you picking up and gaining new regular customers? If so, you've moved into the growth phase. Sales should be increasing each week, and cash flow is almost always positive. In the case of small business, there is likely to be between 10 and 15 workers, employees, working on a consistent roster. Businesses should also start to see an increase in profit. Now, some of the challenges part of this stage include problems with capacity. As the businesses are expanding so quickly, they need to employ new workers and purchase new machinery. And problems with capacity means they're not able to perhaps fulfill this. So they want to be able to get a greater amount of equipment. They can't purchase it in time. They want to be able to expand their factory, and they can't find or source factory, or they can't find workers quick enough. These are some of these challenges with capacity. Cash flow could still be an issue if the business expands really quickly because you've got lots of outgoings as well. Now, to effectively respond to this stage and this challenge, you can purchase new machinery, purchase a new factory, employ additional workers to assist with the growing business. And this should help you to be able to address some of the challenges in the growth stage and to help build capacity, which is one of those major issues in this stage. So let's recap again. You start the business with the establishment. Then when you start to see increase in sales, customers, workers, and issues perhaps with capacity, you're into the growth stage. Now we're moving on to the next stage, which generally happens some years in to a business. It's known as the maturity stage. Now you'll see sales tend to flatten out. Another name for flatten out is to plateau. So the amount of sales has been steadily increasing under the growth stage. If that stays at the same, doesn't drop, but stays relatively stable for a sustained period of time, we call that plateauing. And that's generally a characteristic under this maturity stage. The business would be seen to be thriving with a good customer base and regular cash flow, regular consistent cash flow. It is now more formal. There's detailed approach towards planning should be taking place. Right, during the growth stage, it's more important to make quick decisions for a good chance of success. Now that the rate has slowed under maturity, you should be putting in place more detailed, tactical, and more strategic long-term plans. These decisions don't need to be so quick as you see with the growth stage. So these strategic plans, the 3+ more year long-term plans are important. Some of the challenges that you see include the rate of growth will begin to slow, and you're used to being able to fix up any issues or problems with perpetual almost growth in terms of your business is doing well with the growth stage. But as the rate of growth slows, the cracks can't be plastered over so easily. Profits and sales also tend to level off, so you need to look for savings elsewhere. Marketing needs to retain existing customers through loyalty programs, or the business will need to move into a post-maturity client stage. They will move into that. So as I was saying, to respond to this challenge, you could attempt to implement marketing strategies to better promote your product, to better price your product more appropriately, and often you'll need to amend the product. And you see that often with Apple, with iPhone 4, iPhone 5, iPhone 6, God who knows what iPhone they've got coming up. So they amend, they change the product to reinvigorate this product, or it can become stale. And imagine if Apple still just sold the Apple iPhone 3G S, it would not be any business coming their way anymore. They would be in the next stage. We'll talk about that in a second. So the first 3 stages again is the establishment, the growth, leveling out in terms of sales, profits, is maturity, and we now head into the final stage, which is the post-maturity stage. And there's 3 little parts of that. I sort of say post-maturity A, B, and C. Now, the 3 possible outcomes for this stage include renewal. It's kind of like growth. You have steady state. It's just continuing with maturity. And you have decline or even cessation, the business ceasing to exist. So in terms of the renewal stage of this post-maturity, new areas of growth are now causing increased sales and profit. A business should look to move on to this stage if they are presently in maturity. So that's something you should go, all right, I'm in maturity. I want to kickstart this again. I want to regrow it. I want to increase sales. How can I go about doing that? Some challenges facing this aspect of post-maturity is similar to the growth stage. Some of these challenges include problems with capacity, as again the business may be expanding too quickly. You need to employ a whole bunch of new workers and purchase new machinery. Cash flow could also still be an issue if the business expands quite quickly. Steady state, we see a continuing state of maturity. Just same old, blah, blah, blah. It's not the worst outcome for a business. However, without continued growth or renewal, it would eventually or should eventually face decline, which is not something you're after. Now, some challenges facing this section of post-maturity, they're very similar to maturity because you're essentially continuing on with the maturity stage. Either rate begins to slow, profits and sales level off, and marketing need to retain existing customers through loyalty programs, or they might head into this final stage of decline in post-maturity. No more of that. Now, the last part of the post-maturity decline stage is decline, something you want to try and avoid. Decline, we see profits beginning to fall as a result of poor management, often a direct result of a drop in sales or an increase in expenses. It's the worst possible outcome for a business. It's what occurs before a business becomes insolvent and ceases to exist. So it's not a good thing. The major challenge facing a business at this stage is that unless they do something like marketing and restructure the business, then the business will likely cease to exist. So it's not a good thing that we can see there. All right, guys, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.